If we were to have a vigorous debate right now, Nike or Adidas, Coke or Pepsi, Toyota or Honda, would anything particularly interesting be happening in our brains? I don't really know, but I'm imagining not really. Most of us, despite what we may have heard in this day and age, are probably quite capable of sitting through such a debate and hearing arguments from the other side without losing our cool. Even if data is cherry-picked, we can probably remain calm and explore that conversation, perhaps even with some lightheartedness. Those debates do not get at a global set of values or beliefs that we hold near and dear. If we talk politics, religion, family values and beliefs on Facebook or Twitter, do we remain calm? Social scientists have noted that when we feel like a single political or religious position is under attack, a number of things are happening in our brain, one of which is that our amygdalas, our fight or flight responses, are triggered. And now suddenly it isn't one little position in our brains that feels like it is under attack, but it is our entire worldview that is about to take a beating. And as we sense that, blood is drawn away from our extremities as our physical bodies attempt to protect their cores. Our hearts beat faster to pump oxygen to the brain and to other muscles in preparation for potential flight. Sight and hearing and other senses become sharper. Meanwhile, epinephrine triggers the release of blood sugar and fats into our bloodstream from temporary storage sites in the body, supplying energy to our bodies. And all of these things happen, all of these changes happen in our bodies so quickly that most of the time we are not even aware that they are happening. In fact, the wiring is so efficient that the amygdala and the hypothalamus start this cascade even before the brain's visual centers have a chance to fully process what is happening. This system keeps you and me alive. It is how we are able to move before we are even aware that the car is curdling down the road toward us. And it is also a major league pain in the neck when we start discussing our core values of family, politics, religion, nationality, and way of life. If you are like me, you have experienced this kind of response at many different times, including that time of day that was made for rest and restoration. It's 10:30. You are sat on the couch, your eyes are already halfway closed, and you snap awake. No, I will not fall asleep on the couch tonight. That is unhealthy. I should go to bed. I wonder what's happening in the news. Let me just look at my phone. And there you are 2.5 hours later, still on the couch, and all of these physiological processes are occurring in fits and starts over that 2.5-hour period. No, people suddenly didn't become even worse drivers in New Jersey. I have tried to remember that when someone cuts me off while I am taking my children to school, maybe they are not jerks. They're probably just tired. Chronic low-level stress for your body is like a motor that's idling too high for too long. Slowly, the engine will become worn out. Our scripture reading affirms in light of this that you are called to be the salt of the earth and light to the world. But you are not called to constantly rage at the world. Jesus prayed, Jesus sought out retreat at numerous times as they are documented in the Gospels. You are called to be light and you are called to be salt, which requires a measure of joy in life. How could you be light in the world if you do not ever experience joy? This requires a measure of joy amidst scandalous attacks on your sensibilities. Joy does not come without the cross either. Real life does not come without the death of something. We cannot thrive without something dying. What is dying? What is dying that is a part of us, that is a core part of our identities? What is dying in order to give us new life, in order for us to blossom, in order for us to become light and salt? Christians have often been promised in our society a Christianity either apart from the cross in more liberal circles, or a cross-shattered Christ who takes care of things for us in more evangelical circles. Either way, the cross doesn't actually have a lot to do with me. And if the cross has little to do with me, then nothing ever needs to die for other things to thrive and bloom. Nothing ever needs to die for my faith to bloom. Nothing ever needs to assail my sense of safety and protection from the other. Without the cross, we can be told that Scripture was written either to make us happy or at the very least satisfied, rather than it being a proclamation of the good news, the radical good news for all people. Nothing changes if there's no change at the root of the tree. And at the root of some of our trees is an entirely modern construct that only a small percentage of the world actually hold closely, I would contend. And that is that everything is just going to work out fine. And it will always work out just fine. Perhaps for some folks in our neighborhood in Montclair, it is this very idea that we hold so closely that is in the process of dying. You can imagine that everything will be fine is not something that large portions of the world population have been able to affirm with any kind of consistency. The Palestinians believe that everything will just work out just fine. I don't know. Do Colombians believe that right now? Do Haitians suspect that everything will just work out just fine? Folks in South Sudan, Somalia. The notion that things will work out okay, while a purely modern construct, is limited surely to a relatively small percentage of people on the planet, and perhaps that is dying among us. But in every death is a rebirth. Without death to certain things, nothing can ever really live. We cannot shine. We cannot be salt to the people of this earth. The other side to a particular kind of death is that it is not so much that Christianity in America right now faces an identity crisis, but the right here, right now, is giving rise to a clarity of identity. Children of God, have you ever felt more alive to what you stand for? I have been undone. I have wept for near joy when I think about a personal set of beliefs that I hold dear, some of which may still be incorrect and need to endure scrutiny if they are to belong to the light, but a set of beliefs that says that, yes, when it comes down to it, I do stand with refugees. I'm going to do my best to be good with my Muslim brothers and sisters. I'm okay with speaking up for the disenfranchised. I'm thrilled, actually, that my faith necessitates a recognition, the Spirit of God in our Syrian and Afghan friends, and also the person that cut me off on the way to school the other day. When we let go of the idea that everything is going to be just fine or work out just fine, when that is given a proper burial, we are now that much more free to engage the dishonorable and dismaying treatment of all God's children. Things have not always been okay. But in nearly every crisis around this world, we know that there have been faithful people who did the next right thing, who were salt to their neighbors, who were light to the world even when things appeared to be very dark. Do we assume that someone like André Trocmé, the French Protestant clergyman in Le Chambon in the south of France, that when he was preaching during World War II, he preached that everything will work out just fine as his community sheltered 4,000 Jews, thereby doubling his town's population for 4 years? And as he preached, Elizabeth Koenig Kaufmann, who was a child in Le Chambon in the 1940s, said of her experience during that time, nobody asked who was Jewish and who was not. Nobody asked where you were from. Nobody asked who your father was or if you could pay. They just accepted each of us, taking us in with warmth, sheltering children, often without their parents, children who cried in the night from their nightmares. And every time people of faith have stood for the refugee and the child who cried in the night. Yes, we are being reminded that as some things die, as some things are nailed to the cross, we are an Easter people, and that we do indeed stand for certain things. Christians have been promised a faith without the cross for a long time in America, a life that can be kept safe. Christians, evangelical Christians at least, have also been promised hegemony and privilege and special status in America, given free rein to dictate policy and practices in the public square. And any attempt at separating Christian hegemony from the public square has been resisted forcefully. Like listening to the devil tempt Jesus, evangelical and conservative Christians in America, broadly speaking, have been willing to listen to anyone who promises them safety and a restoration of their ability to dictate policy and practice. Of course, that is firmly rooted in a white Christianity, for this is where things get tricky. As the devil tempts Jesus and says, "I will give all these kingdoms to you," the Christian is tempted by the one who seeks to restore their place in the world through an aggressive militaristic foreign policy and their place in society by suggesting that every person of color lives in the inner cities, is entirely helpless, and must live in bombed-out ghettos that are cultureless, that every Muslim is a terrorist or a terrorist in waiting, that every refugee is somebody who causes a society problems rather than someone who is fleeing from problems caused by tyrants. That every Latino is here to take your job. That every person who identifies as transgendered is obviously a pedophile who likes to hang out in bathrooms. Bow down to me, and I will give you all of this. No, I didn't just say that the president is the devil. In the same way that Jesus did not, I would contend, encounter a horned guy in a tuxedo holding a trident. Jesus rather battled the temptation to use power in such a way that it would benefit him and shortchange others. It is Christian leaders themselves who have been lobbying for these policies for decades. And now the Johnson Amendment is up for debate too. That is also a clarification of identity. Jesus tells those who are listening to him that they are light and salt immediately after verses 1 through 12 in Matthew 5 in the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor in spirit, he says. Blessed are those who mourn, he proclaims. Blessed are the meek and those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted. And in that crowd listening to his sermon were surely people who were all of those things. To suggest that they are blessed, well, that too is a clarity of identity. Jesus offers that list, proclaiming blessing on all sorts of people, and then says to the church, immediately after that, then says to the church, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. So let your light shine. Peace be with you.